it's launching. Okay, it is ready. And welcome, Ryan. Here we have Ryan Lynch today, who has been very kind to us to consider this interview. And as you know, Ryan is the author of the new book we're launching for San Jordi. And we would like to ask him a few questions so that you, our dear audience, gets to know him a bit better. Um, Hi, Ryan.
Hi.
My name is Aloy, and I am together with Alba and my wife, the heads of Mel Negra, who had this love at first sight with your game, and I thought that people will actually find it very interesting, but they will also find interesting to know a bit more about you. So would you mind telling us a bit about you, your background in general, or as a player, whatever you think is interesting?
Yeah. So my name's Ryan. I live in Chicago in the United States. Um, my background is mostly in art and design. I grew up um, drawing every day. I got my degree in college in drawing, and then worked in marketing and design for years and years before getting back into gaming. Um, And yeah, one day around the pandemic, I got laid off from my marketing job. I was playing games with my 9-year-old son and watching some of my old favorite movies like Sleeping Beauty and Cinderella with my 3 or 4-year-old daughter at the time. And I was just sitting there drawing these princesses with swords and thinking about, the kind of fantasy game I wanted to play. Uh, writing a little bit, and eventually it got to the point where I realized this was a game and this would be, something I wanted to make and share. So that's the story of how Perils and Princesses, started. Um, yeah.
That's interesting. It's funny because that was the second question I was going to ask. I was going to be a bit evil in this question, and I was going to ask, okay, yeah, right. There are lots of role-playing games, and there are tons of fantasy games. Why don't you just do Dungeons and Dragons
Yeah.
setting? Let's say. What, in other words, for people that's watching us, um, what is it that makes this game unique?
Yeah. I think that was so, as I was getting back, I had played some Dungeons and Dragons as a teenager, and I've always been into fantasy, but when I started getting back into playing role playing games, it didn't seem like the right kind of, or it didn't seem like a genre of fantasy that I really related to. There's a little bit, Dungeons and Dragons has this, um, it either has this power fantasy where you're these super heroic characters, or it seemed to be very gritty and grimdark for some of the OSR games where the fantasy is about spitting into the face of death and your character can die at any time and everything. The world is dangerous and bleak. Um, and I liked how some of those games approached the 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 cleverness you need and the teamwork and the problem solving, but the genre of fantasy didn't really fit with some of my, for some of my favorite fantasy media and fairy tales, and this, this kind of fantasy where you have these fairy tale characters and little bits of humble magic, and you're working together, and the sort of little um you know the little, like, the moments in the Hobbit where um those tender moments that help them get through um the scary world of their adventure. And I really wanted to capture um that kind of feeling in a game, and I hadn't quite seen something that did it in a way
Hmm.
that worked for me. So that's where that started. It's fantasy, but it's a specific type of fairy tale and humble adventure.
Yeah, and there's another question that's I'm very curious about. Actually, I kind of guess the answer, but because this is a game that in the back it says it's for children from 10 years old, but it's not really a game for children, is it? Or is it, something that will cater to everyone?
I think it's a great family game. So I think there are definitely, first of all, I think children like stuff that's more scary than we give them credit for. I think kids,
Hmm.
I think, and um, especially the kind of kid who's going to be drawn to this game will appreciate those. Even if you watch the 1939 Snow White Disney movie, there's some frightening moments. Snow White asks the evil queen asks the huntsman to take her heart and put it in a box. There's the moment with the frightening trees, um, and the shadowy trees that are like grabbing at Snow White before she's finds the friends in the forest. So I think that bit of unknown and scary stuff, I think kids can deal with it more than we think. And I think that this game in particular is great for, the rules itself. I don't think a group of small kids could play together. I think they're better off just playing imagination how they should be. But I think a little bit older kids, like 10, um, or 9 or 10, if they're really into it, playing with their parents, or an older sibling or something, they have a great time with it. I think having a little, having someone GM who can guide them through it, families have a great time playing together.
That's what I was supposing, but the truth is, I ran this game for my group, well, for my role playing games group club, and it was all 30-year-olds or 40-year-olds, and everybody loved it. So I suppose it's really very open. And as you were mentioning, your game is rather unique, and it's unique for many reasons, for the setting and so on. But also, we found it very unique for the way it's how would I put it, for the way it is explained, how the put in the spotlight the characters which are generically feminine, and that's something that I had never seen, and we liked it a lot. When we looked at the game, we thought it could be a good entry point for women, for girls, into this hobby. And I was wondering if how was this game received in the US? If you think that this as a game has contributed to more women, more girls playing role playing games.
Yeah, I definitely think. I mean, I had it with. First of all, I had it with my youngest daughter in mind. She was the inspiration for a lot of these characters. But I also, I mean, growing up in the '90s, uh, it felt like even as a young boy, that doing anything that was a little bit feminine was very frowned upon, or you got made fun of for doing anything that would be it was very toxic in terms of getting made fun of if you had a little pink on your backpack. Or I remember shopping for um, shopping for folders, and I wanted the folder that had the dolphin on it or whatever, but then putting it back and making sure to get the Batman folder so that no one would make fun of me. So I think not only has it been, I've had a great response from women who maybe haven't found a game that spoke to them how they wanted to, but I've also had a great response from men um, who just think it's very freeing to be able to, um, have permission to pretend and imagine a different kind of character, or have fun with, um, different kind of abilities and different kind of things that you might not feel you have permission to do in a different kind of game.
Yeah, that absolutely, and it really makes it as we were saying, a very different game, no, a very special game, and totally making us love it. And I wouldn't want to keep you much longer, so I just wanted to ask you one final question, very light. But since we at Mel Negra, one of our interests is to create new readers, new role-playing game readers, or new players in general, maybe you have one trick or two that you could share about how to create quick games, or maybe some trick here or there for running a game, something that might be useful. Maybe if you can think of something.
Oh, for running a game or for creating a game?
Whatever you
Just or
prefer.
either
Maybe
either.
for creating a game
So
is
I
it's
think this is
easier.
this is a tip probably for both. I have whether you're creating or creating your own world for a home game, and with no, you don't need to publish it or anything, but just thinking of running a game, what is you should read a lot of books that interest you, and then have a journal or a note on your phone nearby, and just write down, so you don't forget, write down even just a word that you really like, or write down a situation or a name, or just be ready while you're reading and to write down little things. And that is just such a good resource, especially with creating Perils and Princesses. A lot of it started with just my notes app on my phone, and I have a long list of just words that I came by while I was reading that felt like a word that might fit in this world, so that later on, when I'm thinking about abilities or setting, I can look at my phone and say, here's just a list of plants that I just found that seemed right. I think always having your mind open and gathering little bits of resources that'll spark your imagination later is a really good tool.
Excellent, thank you. And I just came up with another one. Sorry,
Okay,
I was thinking,
that's fine.
I realized that normally for authors are very prolific. There are these game authors that have created like many games. No, and so far I think you created Pearls and Princesses, but I don't know if you created other games that I don't know of. But I think it had like a huge success. I was surprised how somebody that just created their first game, if that is the case, I'm not sure, got this kind of Kickstarter with whatever 5,000 backers or something like that. And I was thinking to ask you about this and about whether you have any future plans to create any new game or the pipeline or.
Yeah, I wanted to make sure to support Perils and Princess because it kind of had a viral moment when I first launched it. I wanted to make sure to support it a little bit with some adventures, especially because it's geared to maybe new players. I wanted to make sure it had all the tools you needed in case, it felt incomplete without some adventures to support it. Looking forward, I'm at kind of a crossroads now where I don't know. I have a couple things I want to do, and I don't know which one's going to be the next. So I would love to keep making adventures for Perils and Princesses. I think I have another option would to be to make a solo game or a solo duet GM-less game that is in a similar spirit of Perils and Princesses, but something that you can play by yourself. And I think down the line, when it makes sense in a year or two, I think like a hardcover, bigger, expanded edition might be something that would make sense too, since people keep wanting. I think there's some demand for it, and I'd love to build out the game now that I understand it more after playing it and after seeing more people play it. I feel like I understand it way better than when I first came out with it. So.
Okay, that's awesome. Very thanks a lot for your interesting answers and for your time. It's been great having
Of course.
you in here, and I'm happy to tell you that we'll be launching Perills i Princesses, that's the name in Catalan, on a very special day, which is Sant Jordi, which is a day where knights fought a dragon, supposedly, and then there's a princess in there as well, and there are some versions that create books out of the rose as well. It's all a very interesting tradition, and we'll be just bringing your game to be on that day. We just thought it was the best occasion we had. And
Perfect. That's perfect.
nothing else. Thank you a lot for your time, and take care. Bye bye.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. Sorry.